We're almost there, everybody. Welcome back to 3170s Horror Movies for Halloween, where I'm counting down my favorite horror movies from the 1970s. So we're at number 4 today. We're almost done. I've been here for a very long time. At number 4, we have my absolute favorite movie by the late, great Wes Craven, and that's The Hills Have Eyes. As great as Nightmare on Elm Street is, as great as Scream is, I absolutely love The Hills Have Eyes. I love Scream and Nightmare on Elm Street, but just The Hills Have Eyes I can't explain it. I love it more than both of those movies. It's a premise that we've seen in many horror movies. You have this family going on vacation, they get stranded out in the middle of the desert, and they run into these desert dwellers, this feral family of cannibals, and you essentially have this family having to fight for their lives against these cannibals. Very simple premise, but The Hills Have Eyes is one of my best movies that is one of my favorite movies that deals with that premise.
I come back for you later, girlie.
A lot of people love The Hills Have Eyes remake, and I do think that's a great movie, but The Hills Have Eyes remake misses something that the original has that is what made it one of my favorite horror movies. In the original Hills Have Eyes, you have this family of cannibals, and they're the villains, and they're treated like characters. The villains in this movie are characters. They're not just some obstacle that our protagonists have to deal with. We get to know these cannibals, we know their family dynamic, and it creates that family versus family thing in this movie, which I absolutely love.
Marge! Yeah, Papa.
You keep an eye on that young tenderloin baby. I don't want nothing to happen to her unless I say so.
You kidding me, Papa? I'm going with you.
I don't care.
We don't really have that in the remake. They remove that. The cannibals in the remake are still really good, but they're not treated like characters. They're treated like a threat. They're a good threat, but I like the fact that in the original, the threat are characters too. Papa Jupiter is one of my favorite horror movie villains. Pluto, of course, Mars, and again, that family dynamic that they have between them. The fact that they're working together against this white bread family that's desperately trying to defend themselves against these people. It's just great.
Mars, you get him? Kill the baby!
This was pretty early in my viewing of horror movies. I mean, I had seen all the big franchises, Halloween franchise, Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, Friday the 13th franchise, Scream, Child's Play, Hellraiser. I had seen all those, and, I was looking for something else, and so I checked out The Hills Have Eyes. I checked out Last House on the Left, and then a few months after that I checked out The Hills Have Eyes, and, the attack on the trailer really stuck with me in this movie. And again, much like a few movies that I talked about before this one, the violence isn't flashy, it's just raw, it's just violence, and it's such a punch in the gut. You have these cannibals, they are stealing this baby, and then the mother comes in to try and save her baby, and her mother comes in, so you have mother, grandmother fighting for this baby. And usually in a horror movie, if you have two mothers, at least one of the mothers is going to live. But not in The Hills Have Eyes. They're like the first ones killed. I mean, just as they're fighting for this baby, just both of them get blown away, just poof. It was very shocking for back in the 70s, and I still say it's shocking now. The remake does that too. But again, you have to give credit to The Hills Have Eyes because it did it first. The remake, it's a lot more violent, and there's a lot more theatrics to it. And yeah, the remake, it can be a little more disturbing, but the reason the remake is more disturbing is because it has to be more disturbing, because it needs to try and outdo the original. And, I mean, as much as I do enjoy the Hills Have Eyes remake, I think it's kind of trying too hard to outdo the original. Because again, in the original, it's not flashy violence, it's just violence. And for me, just showing violence in its truest form can be more effective than flashy over-the-top violence. But I do love my flashy over-the-top violence, don't get it confused. One of my favorite scenes in all of horror is it's shortly after the father has been killed, and Papa Jupiter is sitting around this fire with his family, and they're eating the dad. No two ways about it. These people are cannibals, and they are cannibalizing the father. And Papa Jupiter is talking to the severed head of the father as they're eating. And it's just such an effective scene. I mean, yeah, okay, it has... This is a low-budget horror movie, and it has that low-budget horror movie acting, but it's still great acting. I mean...
I'll eat the heart of your stinking memory.
I'll eat the brains of your kids! I'm in! You're out!
And you see this, like, piece of meat hanging out of Papa Jupiter's mouth, and it's just that moment where it clicks. It's like, that's human meat hanging out of his mouth. Because, again, they're eating this guy as he's talking to his severed head. It's one of my favorite horror movie monologues, and it's the thing that raises Papa Jupiter to one of my favorite horror movie villains.
Guys! I got a feeling that tenderloin daddy gonna come looking for her. You can take care of him then.
I'll rip his lungs out.
And I love the whole thing where you have this civilized, upper-class, white-bread family facing these savages, and once everything's been taken away from them, this white-bread family has to become just as savage as their enemies in order to survive. I love me a good cannibal flick, and for me, The Hills Have Eyes is one of the greatest. And is it just me, or do cannibal movies make you hungry? I mean, every time I watch a cannibal movie, I have a sudden craving for fried chicken. I don't know why. Scream is a great movie. Nightmare on Elm Street is a great movie. But I think anybody out there who is a Wes Craven fan, for Halloween, leave some room for The Hills Have Eyes, because it's an absolutely fantastic movie. Very shocking for the 70s. Maybe not as shocking by today's standards, but that's only because people need it to be shocking to try and outdo movies like The Hills Have Eyes. But still great. Great villains, great story. Family versus family movie. Can't recommend it enough. Check it out if you haven't.
What the hell is this?
Well, that's just some stuff that I...